3, 2, 1. We on, Phil? Thank you. Ready to go, Chair.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone to the first virtual Cabinet meeting held by Bassetlaw District Council. Given the current challenging situation we all face following the outbreak of COVID-19, the law has been changed to allow councils to host virtual meetings rather than requiring councillors to be present in the committee chamber when making decisions. This keeps everyone safe by maintaining a social distance and allows business to be conducted in an appropriate manner. It's very important that all councillors can hear each other, and so in a moment I will invite Cabinet members in alphabetical order to introduce themselves so we can test their broadband connection and everyone can hear appropriately. First of all, Councillor Dukes.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Here.
My connection's working just fine. Councillor Lee.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Scawthorne.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Shaw.
Present, Chair.
And Councillor White.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Also, to support the meeting, we have a number of officers that are in attendance, and so I'd just like to invite officers to also test their connectivity and everyone can hear everyone appropriately. Apologies. Before that, I'd just like to check that the liaison members that we have in attendance could also hear us properly. So first of all, Councillor Brand, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Present and correct.
Thank you. And Councillor Fielding.
Here, present.
Thank you. I'll move on then to the officers that are supporting us this evening. First of all, Mr. Armiger.
Yes, present, Chair.
Mr. Brown.
Present, Chair.
Mrs. Hopkinson.
Present, thank you.
Mr. Taylor.
Good evening, everybody.
And Mr. Wormald.
Yes, present, Chair.
Thank you. If during this meeting we lose connectivity and the meeting becomes inquorate or the live streaming for the public fails, what I will do is adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to allow connection to be re-established. Now, this evening there is a confidential item on the agenda, and when we reach that point of the meeting, the live stream will come to an end. And it's at this point that member or officer that wishes to, having raised a code of conduct matter and not appropriate for them to remain in the meeting, will be leaving us. Given there is, this is a virtual meeting, there's no corporate responsibility to detail any fire alarm procedures as we normally would. However, I would like to highlight that this meeting is being live streamed on social media, so all participants, please be aware of your actions and take appropriate safety precautions from the place where you are. And also, just so that everyone can hear everyone clearly, can I remind members to please switch off their microphones when they're not speaking. That will make sure that any background noises are kept to a minimum. Now, agenda item 1 is the suspension of council procedure rules for 15 minutes to allow for questions from members of the public. Members of the public have been given the opportunity to request to ask a question at this meeting, though I understand that no requests have been received, and I'd just like to double check that with the committee clerk.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair.
Thank you. Moving then to agenda item 2, which is apologies. Have any apologies been received, please?
Apologies from Councillor Quigley. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 3 is to receive declarations of interest by members or officers. At this point, I'd ask if any members wish to indicate a declaration of interest at all. And if there isn't, and I'll take it on that basis that there aren't any, I will turn to officers to ask if there are any declarations of interest at this point.
Yes, Chair, it's Dave Armiger. I declare a pecuniary interest in item 12A and will be leaving the meeting at that point.
Thank you.
Chair, it's Steve Brown here, Head of Corporate Services, declaring a disclosable pecuniary interest in agenda item 12 and confirm that I will leave the meeting prior to that discussion.
Thank you very much. Are there any other interests to be declared at this point? If not, bearing that in mind, we will then move to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 4, the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of March. A revised version has been circulated as the minutes for action and outstanding minutes item was omitted on the original version, so that has been corrected. I will move round members in alphabetical order to determine if you are for or against or abstain that they represent an accurate record. And if you could please clearly indicate when your name is called. I wasn't at that meeting myself, and so I will first of all turn to Councillor Dukes.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Evans. Councillor Evans, I don't know if you could hear me.
I think it looks like she's lost connection, Chair.
Okay.
Try and get back into the meeting.
If we could try to do that, that would be great. I will move on though. So next I have Councillor Scawthorne.
For, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Shaw.
For.
Thank you. Councillor White, I understand you also weren't present at that meeting like myself.
Yes, I'll abstain.
Thank you. We don't appear to have Councillor Evans back with us, but I'm content if others are that we move on to the next item. The next item then is agenda item 5, minutes for action and implementation. Now, this is an item that is to be noted, essentially, and I'd simply ask whether there are any comments that anyone would wish to make about this item. If not, and I'll take it on that basis that there isn't, I will then move on to agenda item number 6, which is the outstanding minutes list to be found at pages 17 to 22 of the agenda. Again, are there any comments regarding that agenda item? I will take that there isn't, in which case I will then move on to the forward plan. The forward plan is agenda item 7, to be found at page 13 of the agenda that's been circulated. I would say, however, from the item that has been circulated and made available to the public, there are some proposed changes that I would like to put forward this evening, and that is to change the June council date as advertised so that it is now the 18th of June as opposed to the already published date. So it's bring that item forward. To add the Food Safety Service Plan, which features on this evening's agenda, and ensure that it features at that that council meeting, and also to add the CCTV Code of Practice to the July Cabinet meeting. Now, with those amendments in mind, I will ask Cabinet members if they are in support of that forward plan as amended. First of all, I will turn to Councillor Dukes.
For, Chair.
Thank you. I don't know if Councillor Evans is back with us at this point.
Yes, I am.
Thank you. I don't know if Councillor Evans, you caught all those slight amendments to the forward plan and if you're in support of them. Thank you. Thank you. I'm also in favour of those of the forward plan as amended. Councillor Lee.
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Scawthorne.
For, Chair.
Councillor Shaw.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor White.
In favour, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is number 8A. That is a report from the Cabinet Member for Health and Community Wellbeing. It is the Food Safety Service Plan for 2020 through to 2021, and it is a council key decision and an item that we're required to consider every year. So at this point, I will hand over to Councillor Shaw to outline the report, and thereafter I will defer to Mr. Armiger if there's anything further he would wish to add. So first of all, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to approve and adopt the Food Service Plan 2020-2021. The plan is very robust and builds upon last year's plan, which is to ensure national, regional and local priorities and standards are addressed and delivered. It takes into account local circumstances and reflects the Council's ambition for the district as contained within the current corporate plan. It also takes into account the National Food Rating Scheme and forthcoming legislative changes. The main body of the plan sets out the aims and objectives, background to the plan and the service delivery targets, as well as summarising a full range of activities of the team, such as the numbers of inspections carried out across the district, food sampling, written warnings and the very successful National Food Hygiene Rating. Currently, 877 premises were eligible to be part of the scheme and 822 achieving the highest 5 rating. The team have also been responding to COVID-19 pandemic and have been working closely with Nottingham Police, Nottinghamshire Trading Standards and Bassetlaw District Council's licensing team. This, of course, will be ongoing work with the social distancing, for which the environmental health will be very proactive and working with agencies and businesses. Going forward, the team will also be working in partnership with Service for any change due to Brexit in due course. The service plan is a statutory required document and it is important that the plan is formally approved by the Council. This will ensure transparency and accountability for the Council's food safety services. I draw your attention to 2 recommendations for approval. 1, that the members endorse the Food Safety Service Plan 2020 to 2021 and that the Cabinet refers the Food Safety Plan 2020 to 2021 to the Council for approval and implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Armiger, I think, is there anything further you'd wish to add at all?
I think I'd just add, Chair, that as Councillor Shaw indicated, whilst it is a statutory plan, the quality is in actually the way that staff go about implementing the work that's set out in the plan, and that really is underlined by the fact that we are rated as the 2nd best authority in England in terms of our food safety. So we don't just write a plan, we go out and we implement it. I think that's a very, very crucial message about this particular document. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. I have seen myself the national headlines that have been generated due to the very positive work that's been undertaken by the team. A fantastic piece of work, and sincerely hope we'll be able to continue to perform in that way. I will, at this point, defer to colleagues and cabinet members of cabinet and liaison members if they would wish to indicate, if they would wish to raise anything at this point, or raise any questions, comments, observations. And I will first turn to, I think, Councillor Dukes and then Councillor Brand.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I welcome this report. Again, as Mr. Armour just said, we are the second best in England at this, and we do have lots and lots of very good places for people to eat, and I think we need to highlight that. Secondly, I just wanted to raise post-COVID the social distancing issues that we have, particularly in food establishments, and the indication that there may well be another scheme akin to the 5-star scheme that suggests how well an establishment is set up for social distancing. I wonder if we had any update or news on this.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If I could take Councillor Brand next, if that's all right, and then I'll defer to Councillor Shaw and Mr. Armiger to respond, and hopefully we'll be able to cover both issues. Councillor Brand.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Really, the point that I wanted to make, not a question, but to make a point, is on page 46. It's already been referred to, the Which Magazine's ratings. That was the bit that for me jumped out of the page, and I hope that we can give this all the maximum publicity that it deserves and send our congratulations to the team involved. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. If I could turn to Councillor Shaw, probably covering those contributions, if that's possible, and Mr. Armiger, if appropriate. So first, Councillor Shaw.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for your comments. Yes, it's absolutely fantastic. I have also already sent my congratulations to the team for their amazing work, and the way they've adapted to the COVID situation has been outstanding, and we'll continue to be working extremely hard going forward. And just commenting on Councillor Greaves, well, I'll defer to Mr. Armiger, because I checked with Hannah and they're looking into something similar, but I don't know the exact details. I think it's been drawn up at the moment. I don't know if Mr. Armiger knows any more of that about that.
Okay.
I can certainly assist there, Chair. Yes, there's a couple of initiatives taking place at the moment. As was indicated, there is likely to be something akin to the 5 stars thing that's done for food safety. That will be something which will give people the confidence that going into a premises that the activity has taken place to ensure their safety. That's been worked up. We're trying to work in partnership with other authorities to make sure there's a degree of consistency. I think, to be fair, if everyone else is dragging their feet, that's not going to hold us back. We will get on and implement it as soon as practicable, because once businesses start to open up from, well, in a fortnight's time, we want to be in a position to be able to ensure the safety of residents and their service users. The other thing that's happening at the moment is a huge piece of work looking at principally works up in Retford Town Centre to ensure social distancing can be put in place whilst the town centre operates as close to possible normal functions. So that will be things like queuing in the town centre, the way people move around the town centre, possible changes to traffic flows, the way the market's implemented, lots of other things that have an interaction and an influence on the way people use the town centres. That is something that we are pushing ahead with now in partnership with the County Council. So those two things hopefully will give people the confidence to come into the town centre and start to rebuild that normal usage. And anything we learn can then be brought out into other centres. So Harworth won't be forgotten. If we learn lessons from there, that will be something we will then go out and put in place in other locations.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I think Councillor Scawthorne has indicated, but if that's all right with everyone, I'll take this as the last contribution before we move on. But Councillor Scawthorne.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to point out the amount of where they are with the rating and how well they did to get the rating within the country. It's not through the enforcement or through the enforcement. It's also the amount of advice and guidance that they give to small companies so that they can achieve this rating. Talking firsthand of the way they've supported me in my role as the youth worker in Carlton Lindrick, they have helped me get to the 5-star rating myself. And I think it just shows how good they are and how professional they are in their job. And I thank them all for that. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, if it's all right with everyone, I think we will be able to move then to the vote in relation to this item. The recommendations have been outlined, and so moving to the recommendation, I will ask if members can indicate if they are for, against, or abstain, and please answer clearly when called. So first of all, Councillor Dukes, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
For.
Thank you. I'm also in favour of the recommendations. Councillor Lee.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Scawthorne.
For.
Councillor Shaw.
For.
And Councillor White.
For.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 9 is a report regarding temporary performance reporting arrangements. It's a report that is tabled in my portfolio area of policy and communications. The council undertakes performance monitoring on a constant basis, and this monitoring ranges in a number of different areas, looking towards how well we are emptying the bins, answering the phone, the processing of applications, and how well we're performing as a council in a number of areas. And also this is used in order to monitor how much money the council is receiving, and really focuses not only on inside the authority but also outside as well. Due to COVID-19, Bassetlaw, like every other council up and down the country, has been looking to how best to structure its performance monitoring arrangements. Now, what that really means is that there are some areas that have really come into focus, and we certainly need the recommendations within this paper highlight a number of areas of real focus for us over a temporary period, which will probably last up to a year. The areas of focus include some processes that we as a council manage, but also the impact outside within the wider community. So there are some reporting measures that we won't be publishing as we have done in the past, but we will be focusing on others instead. So just to give a flavour for the kind of areas that we'll be looking towards, the focus will involve, for example, how quickly we're processing benefit applications, because we do know that there's been an increase. We need to make sure that we're processing them as effectively as we can. We do know that there's been a huge increase in work supporting local business, and so we want to be able to monitor the work that we're undertaking there and make sure it's operating as effectively as possible. We also recognise the impact on council finance, and so there are areas of focus for us in relation to revenues, car park charges and other sources of income that we need to keep a close eye on. So what we're looking at is a focused area, a focused number of reporting measures, and we'll be looking at these and working through how best we need to adapt and to ensure that we're delivering services in the best way that we can for the local area. Now, looking at the wider community, we have seen work focusing on people that are in real desperate need. We've been focusing on distributing food parcels, working with the voluntary community, working with our partners, supporting local people who've encountered real difficulties due to COVID-19. We can't just leave things at that. We have to carry on that work because this is a process. And as we come out of lockdown, we need to make sure that we're supporting people in the best way that we can. Now, looking to the recommendations do include approving a new range of measures, also checking whether there's anything more that we need to do, and also that there's a broader point that there's an internal council team within policy and communications that work on this in this area, and there's a recommendation that people liaise with them if they have any questions or concerns. Now, looking at the future, we are mindful that there's other impacts that there will be a need to focus on, and that certainly includes usage of the food bank, people that will be struggling with council tax, the increase in domestic violence, which is something that I highlighted recently through the local press and the work that we're doing there, the volunteer support programme that there is, and also the amount of grant processing that we're doing to local business and local community groups. We need to keep a close eye on that and adapt if necessary. So that's all I wish to say at this point. I will turn to Mr. Brown if there's anything further he would wish to add in addition to that.
Thanks, Chair. Only to add, obviously, as you've rightly pointed out, the work that's been undertaken by the Council in response to COVID and its impact on our communities. But as you said in your introduction, clearly there is a lot of work still going on, providing a whole range of council services. That's reflected in your performance indicators. And just to remind members that Appendix A includes updates on our corporate health check PIs up to the end of Q4. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. I will ask at this point if there are any comments or observations or questions at all from members in relation to this item. I can see I will take Councillor Dukes first, then Councillor Scawthorne, if that's all right. So, Councillor Dukes.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I welcome this report. I think it's a really good way of keeping us on top. And as you'll see in a report that's to come later on in this meeting, the work that has been done doesn't need to be forgotten and needs to be monitored so that we can make best use of that information to move forward later on. I do think we need to make sure that we are as flexible as possible because there will be other things coming down the line later on, particularly with regard to universal credit, particularly with regard to the benefits team and how we make sure that they are not overwhelmed by what comes down the line once we get the tsunami that I fear that we might see once furlough stops. So I think it's really important that we keep on top of these things, and I will really welcome this report for that reason.
Thank you very much. Councillor Scawthorne.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to get people's attention to 006, number of homeless preventions achieved through caseload. The number of homeless preventions is low because people are presenting at the relief stage and already homeless. Following government guidelines to control the spread of COVID-19, we have concentrated on getting people off the streets and into emergency accommodation and our own accommodation. We've also had support from Hope. Throughout the COVID-19 lockdown, the only people on the streets were the ones after numerous attempts to engage by BDC or still choose to be rough sleepers. As of today, we have no one staying in the emergency temporary accommodation, but we have the options to open it if we need to. The housing team are working around the clock to keep everyone give everyone help that needs it. I would like to praise the foresight of the housing team and thank Cabinet colleagues for agreeing to establish the temporary accommodation that had provided to be essential at this time. The Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government have spoke to our Head of Housing, Alison Craig, informing us that they are happy with the way BDC have supported all our tenants. Chair, we have had some excellent results at a difficult time, but some of the most vulnerable people using our services in securing permanent accommodation, accessing services and gaining employment, which I hope to report on at a later date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. There has been a huge amount of work done to support homeless and vulnerable people during this period of time. And I know of the one-to-one work that's been undertaken by the team supporting people to ensure that there's a roof over their head, and also that they have the necessary skills to tackle whatever difficulties they may have, and also ultimately that they can have a long-term home of their own. That is a very difficult exercise for some people, though. So thank you very much. If there aren't any further comments or observations at this point, I will move to the vote in relation to this item, and I'll first turn to Councillor Dukes.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Evans?
For.
Thank you. I'm also in favour. Councillor Lee?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Scawthorne?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw?
For.
Thank you. And Councillor White?
For.
Thank you very much. I will then move on to the next agenda item, 10A, and that is a report from the Cabinet Member for Regeneration, Councillor White, and that is the Green Agenda update. It is classed as a key decision, 810, and is to be found at pages 75 through to 110 of the published agenda. I'll next turn to Councillor White to outline the report. Thank you.
Thank you. In June last year, full council unanimously agreed the authority's commitment to the climate change agenda. This committed us to call on the UK government to provide local government with the powers, resources and help with the funding to achieve carbon neutrality, to develop a policy framework to deliver our commitment, to carry out a full green audit of the council to help determine the prioritisation of our actions, to ensure that appropriate levels of resources are put in place to ensure the delivery of our commitments. These were underpinned within the council plan for 2019 to 2023, which defines the priorities of the administration. The Carbon Trust were appointed at the beginning of this year to undertake the green audit of the council to understand the environmental impact of the council's operation. It found that we produce an estimated 2,382 tonnes of CO2 per annum, and this is broken down as follows. In sports centres, it's 36%, which reflects the significant energy demands of heating swimming pools and sports courts. Our fleet are 26%, electricity is 23%, gas is 12%, water 2%, business travel 1%, and waste 1%. This analysis provided the base for officers to develop a dynamic climate action plan to bring forward the mechanisms to reduce the council's carbon footprint on an ongoing basis. The ambition is to make significant and ongoing reductions in the council's carbon footprint, which will be annually reviewed and reported to Cabinet. The work to meet this commitment has already begun. In March, Cabinet supported an initiative to install sustainable energy generating systems at the council's highest electricity usage sites, Queen's Buildings and the two main leisure centres. The council is also currently working with Nottingham City Council to explore options for the installation of solar panels at our leisure centres. Future revenue and capital budgets will allocate resources to deliver the Climate Action Plan. The Council has a commitment to employing a sustainability officer who will be responsible for overseeing the delivery of these projects. They will be based in the Growth and Enterprise team, which will give them the capacity to work right across the Council. We held interviews in March, but unfortunately we failed to appoint, and therefore the post will be re-advertised. The Climate Action Plan will initially focus financial investment on reducing the carbon outputs of our buildings, and will then turn to the Council's fleet of 186 vehicles. Most of these are procured in partnership with other Nottinghamshire authorities, and work is already in hand through the Transport Managers Group to look at more sustainable fleet options. Currently, the costs of such vehicles are expensive and require dedicated and expensive infrastructure to support them. It is anticipated that over time, technological advancement should bring costs down. But each new fleet purchase will be reviewed when it gets to the end of its economic life, and a gradual replacement with electric vehicles will be part of that consideration. A key issue for the authority is that most vehicles are kept at Carlton Forest, and its grid capacity will need significant financial investment to ensure that there's enough supply to power the fleet, and this is an identified barrier to progress and investment decisions. The Carbon Trust report identified that 1% of our carbon outputs relates to business travel. COVID-19 has meant that this has virtually ceased since the third week of March. Technology is now in place to enable online meetings, which has opened up new ways of working for officers and staff. This has been generally regarded as a positive outcome and experience for most people. This will be embedded into future plans and proposals. The authority is already pursuing a water efficiency plan following the use of government grants in 2018 to review our water usage. The Council's usage is now monitored daily, and any unusual patterns are investigated, which helps identify leaks. In the first year of monitoring, our actual water consumption was reduced by £23,000, a reduction of 10%. There has been a public call for the Council to introduce curbside glass recycling. A further refuse round to provide this service would cost approximately £250,000 to introduce. Officers will be undertaking a review of existing costs to see if this level of resource can be found. But achieving this may cause pressures or reductions on other services, which does need detailed consideration. However, the government has yet to clarify what will be included as statutory recycling services within the final draft of the Environment Bill, and therefore we will need to understand what these will be before committing new resources into the service. The Council is committed to carbon offsetting through its support for tree planting initiatives, including the delivery of the Mayflower Legacy Oaks project, supporting local planting schemes with the Sherwood Forest Trust, leading in the delivery of the Woodland Charter for Sherwood Forest in partnership with the Woodland Trust, through its partnership opportunities, and most significantly through the emerging local plan with its commitments to allocating sites for tree planting. Our local placemaking ambitions will identify Bassetlaw as the northern gateway into Sherwood Forest. In future, there will be an annual report to Cabinet so that we can monitor progress on our carbon reduction agenda and to maintain the pressure on bringing forward new initiatives and proposals. And I ask Cabinet colleagues to support the recommendations at pages 80 and 81, and that's at 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, 6.5 and 6.6. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that outline. Mr. Armiger, is there anything further you'd like to add?
Absolutely nothing else to add to that that summary, Chair.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. At this point then, I'll ask if there are any comments, questions, observations in relation to this agenda item. I think Councillor Dukes, you've indicated.
Waste trucks and buses run on hydrogen, so I don't want to exclude other options if they are viable.
Okay, Councillor White, I don't know if you're able to respond to that query.
I can't respond directly, but obviously we will be looking at the most economical and the best ways of introducing sustainable, environmentally sustainable transport. And we'll be, as I said in the report, we were doing this in partnership with our Nottinghamshire colleagues. And if hydrogen in the future proves to be the best way forward, of course, we'll take that path.
Thank you very much. Mr. Armiger, you've indicated.
Yeah, I was really just to reinforce that point. I indicated just as Councillor White got to that point is that we are working with the other authorities. Hydrogen is still definitely there as an option. Our rurality means that energy density is actually quite important, and it certainly hasn't been ruled out, but it is all a question of economics and the opportunities. But the Transport Managers Group are very alive to all the options.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or observations at all?
Yes, Chair.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Lee.
Sorry, the vagaries of this system, I did indicate, but maybe you didn't get the email.
I'm afraid I didn't see a message on the chat facility, but you were able to speak up, so there you go.
Don't worry. I was going to answer the question that was asked of Councillor White, but we're already discussing that. We buy our new fleet with the rest of Nottinghamshire because we get better value for money the more we buy. So even if we start buying a different kind of fleet, as time goes on, we can change to get the best Green Deal possible. And I wanted to add that I know that I and the rest of the council really support this, because moving to a greener future is important now, but important for future generations. So I'm very much in support of this. And as part of my portfolio area, we are looking at how we can make the best we can of the Green Deal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If there aren't any other indications at this point, I'll be minded to move to the vote in relation to this agenda item. So if I could first ask, if colleagues, cabinet members could indicate if there are for, against or abstain. And I'll go in alphabetical order as I have done thus far. So Councillor Dukes, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
For.
Thank you. I'm also in favour. Councillor Lee.
For.
Councillor Scawthorne.
For.
Councillor Shaw.
For.
And Councillor White.
For.
Thank you. That being the case, I will next move on to agenda item 11A, which is a report that's been alluded to earlier on this evening. It's a report from the Cabinet Member for Corporate Services, Councillor Dukes. Its title is COVID-19 Response, Building a Community Response, and is to be found at pages 111 through to 120 of the published agenda. I'll next turn to Councillor Dukes to outline the report.
Thank you, Chair. This report looks to identify issues that have arisen out of the current situation, look at the initial response in Bassetlaw and the long and short term issues arising from that. Also, it looks at some of the things we need to consider as part of coming out of the other side. It should also be said that due to the way in which reports to Cabinet have to go through due process, some of the information has been overtaken by the ever-changing national and local picture during lockdown. It should also be said that most of the data mentioned in the report is for April and early May. So in that light, I will go through my response to the report, and then we can look at any updates towards the end if need be. NOTS CCSH, Coronavirus Community Support Hub, went live on the 23rd of March to support the government shielding programme in order to support EVPs, extremely vulnerable people. There are 22,000 or so in Nottinghamshire, around 5,000 receiving support from the government and local scheme. The chart at 3.2 in the report shows the breakdown of this by district. Food Supply Group was set up under the Local Resilience Forum. This group has worked with both those in self-isolation on the VPL, established through the GPs and other healthcare groups, but not exclusively those with limited or no financial means. They have also worked to support the current food bank provision and offer improved access to food supplies for those who are vulnerable or self-isolating. It should be said that the Bassetlaw Hub was established 2 weeks before the county hub became operational through our partner BCVS. Due to our already strong partnership working in Bassetlaw and through the CCG, we started contacting all those known through local social prescribing, through the GP practices, and started ragging them, rating them in order of need. Through the BDC customer service team and our links with local parish and community groups, we were able to identify areas of specific need in what is a very rural community. Fairly soon after this, BCVS/BDC team started supporting those beyond the shielded group. There has been a 66% increase in the demand for food bank type services, and BDC customer services became the front line for this, offering full weekend and bank holiday cover, the most comprehensive service cover in Nottinghamshire. This level of cover, although excellent, is not sustainable and has been in constant state of review, making sure that it is available when need most arises. The chart at 3.7 on page 113 shows the level of referrals up to the 6th of May. I mentioned earlier the food bank, and the food bank in Bassetlaw was unable to operate in its original guise due to the problems that it had offering sufficient social distancing capability at both its Worksop and Retford sites. And the decision was taken to transfer all stock to the operation being coordinated by BCVS. This was to protect both the volunteers working at the food banks, many of whom were vulnerable themselves, and indeed the client base. Food donations have continued to come in, and particular mention should be made to Morrison's, who have massively supported this effort in terms of regular food donations, and Wilkinson's for the donations of household products. The manager of the food bank is now embedded in the BCVS operation and is taking this opportunity to look at how the food bank locally should look following the current situation. It should be said that had BCVS not taken on this role, it would have been left to BDC to use considerable resource, both financially and in staffing, to get this up and running. Having said that, £25,000 of financial support was given to BCVS to sustain local emergency food provision to our communities. As mentioned, there has been a 2/3 rise in the demand for food parcels in Bassetlaw, almost entirely due to those in economic need. And it should be said that although this level of support from agencies in the community and business is entirely laudable and should be trumpeted, the food bank should not ever be seen as an essential service, even though currently it is. Food banks should have no reason to exist in today's society, and we should work hard to enable people not to be in food poverty. The bullet list at 311 shows firstly those groups whose needs are supported by the hub, and secondly those with more complex needs who are not supported by the hub, but are supported through other agencies. There is no doubt, as current research is showing, that those that already have complex needs are more likely to suffer greatly from the COVID outbreak. We need to be aware of this and be putting resource and effort in place in order to support our district's most vulnerable people. Our third sector organisations are suffering through lack of funds and activity, and this means that when we come out of the other side of this situation, we may find gaps that need filling in the supporting of some of our residents. Many individuals are asking for this kind of help for the first time and are not sure where to go, who to contact, and how to get help, and we need to be there for them. As of the 5th of May, the active client list stood at 2,211 vulnerable people in the district. 500 safe and well checks are being made each week, and the learning disability community, another hit hard by the virus, are being supported now through the hub. It is clear that a holistic social prescribing model that is linked to accurate sources of community information provides us with a strong basis to build on in Bassetlaw. On to benefits and universal credit. The table at 3.15 shows national universal credit figures for March the 1st through to April the 28th. We are finding it difficult to get more localised figures, although we have been promised them. It is clear that claims for universal credit are continuing to be high, and we expect waves and troughs as businesses come out of offering furlough and some businesses struggle to get back to the staffing levels that they had previously. Again, many of those claiming are doing so for the first time in their lives and are struggling. At BDC, we deal with those needing to make housing benefit and council tax claims, and this has been pretty much in line with the increases shown in the table. Our three money advisors have seen around a 25% increase in calls and have been dealing with claims around council tax, housing benefit, and again, the majority of these calls are from those who have not had to deal with the benefit system before. By the end of April, Bassetlaw had credited all those eligible for all or part of the government's £150 hardship payment for council tax, one of the first to complete the task, and any new claims coming forward will get this grant automatically. Universal credit claims for Bassetlaw tenants in April rose by nearly 12%. However, we believe that this is the tip of the iceberg and the real figures will not be visible until the end of June, once the universal credit claim schemes have gone through. Over 80% of these new claimants are already in arrears. All of this adds up to concerns for the vulnerable and cared for groups in our community. Food poverty among our younger residents is a concern, and we need to be aware that this may be a real issue once those schools that have been supporting some of those children through the current crisis, and I thank our teaching staff and our support staff in schools for doing so. Once they close for the summer, how do we make sure that those vulnerable children are supported and cared for? We've seen an increase in ASB and domestic violence locally, all issues linked with poverty and stress. And this is a national picture that needs some local funding to be able to support properly. Our community and voluntary sector has really come to the fore in this crisis. And although many of them are themselves facing financial difficulties, everyone recognises the need to support the most vulnerable in our society. The role of elected members should also not be forgotten here, as they have been crucial in supporting the council's approach and supporting ward-based work in their communities. How do we build on this response? Although it has been humbling to see the support provided to residents and communities through the crisis, experience shows that certain groups, including the young and minority communities, are disproportionately vulnerable during economic and social disruption. This council will work with community leaders and the voluntary and community sector to seek to preempt or mitigate such impacts. Actions and recommendations are outlined at 3.29 and 3.21, but suffice to say we need to be ready to take up the slack where localised community support ceases to exist at the end of the crisis. Put in place resource to support those finding it difficult to navigate the benefit system. Work with existing and emerging agencies to offer coordinated and localised response serving the needs of both our urban and rural communities. Look at the continued support for our food bank. Offer sustainable and practical support that will make a difference. This will take resource, and we need to be ready for a second wave and the fallout from the first wave. Bassetlaw has not only quickly reviewed and focused local services to support those most in need, but has acted with partners to do the same. No other institution can play this role to this effect. And at this point, can I pay particular attention to the officers of BDC, who have throughout this crisis stepped up to the plate. Their hard work, dedication and sense of service has been humbling. And on behalf of the residents of Bassetlaw, I would like to say a thank you in public to them all. I point you to the recommendations at 6.1 that members consider the proposed actions and approve their development into a set of actions that will form part of regular updates to Cabinet on their progress. And 6.2, members approve the working up of a sustainable model for future operations with other agencies, as per para 5.2. I point you to the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, is there anything further you'd like to add at all?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you, Councillor Dukes, for that comprehensive outline to the report and your positive comments about the support that has been given to the community by the authority, by members and officers. I'll wholeheartedly agree with you. Are there any comments, questions, observations from members of Cabinet? I'll turn to Councillor White first of all.
Thank you. I very much welcome this report. Usually these reports are the other way around. Usually we present a report telling people what we're going to do, not telling people what we've done. 4 months ago, if anybody said to us that we'd be reporting on a pandemic that had locked down the whole of the country, we'd have raised our hands in horror and said, no, we couldn't have managed that. And I totally, wholeheartedly support Councillor Dukes' thanks to our staff and our officers, because they reacted swiftly, efficiently and very, very speedily to the crisis. And their efforts has made a huge difference to our community. I also want to give recognition to the work that BCVS has done, because they have worked on the front line supporting the most vulnerable in our communities. And for most of us, it's they who have coordinated those efforts. I'm actually doing some food parcel deliveries for them. I'm going out on Thursday again. And what I have to say that people who receive those food parcels are so grateful, and it has made a difference to their lives. They have actually had food on the table that they wouldn't have got. And so the work that's been done deserves a lot of recognition. We also need to recognise in other communities where they have set up their own support networks, and they also move very swiftly, very effectively to support their neighbourhoods. And I know that councillors have been active, extremely active, and taken leading roles in setting those up, and we need to give recognition to support that they have given their communities as well.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any other comments or observations at all? I think Councillor Brand, I think you just indicated if you're able to speak at this point.
Yeah, thank you. I think the response by everyone across the council has been absolutely phenomenal, and I think we must be one of the better prepared and better executed councils across the country. I would just like to record, if it's possible, thanks to people who have had no role in our communities before, but just came out of nowhere almost to help. and I hope that we can capture their enthusiasm and their commitment, perhaps in some volunteering exercises in the future. In my community, there's people that I know of, but had played almost no part in community life, who've really stepped up to the plate. They get nothing for it. They work hard, and I'd like a particular thanks to go to residents across the district who have stepped up and out and helped support this whole enterprise. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Scawthorne, I think you've indicated.
Excuse me, Chair. I think Councillor Shaw's before me.
I couldn't see that. Apologies.
It's okay, Chair. I did send you a message, but I don't know if they're not coming through to you.
Mine's on a delay. Councillor Lee did indicate previously, but it was a few minutes before it popped up, so apologies. Councillor Shaw.
Well, I just wanted to endorse everything that's been said, and to the immediate response was amazing. And I think it just shows how the teams within Bassetlaw District Council know the partnership so well to be in a position to work so effectively, so quickly. I'm doing some work through the county council scheme, but the coordination within the county council and the district council staff knowing what the county council are doing as well is particularly, I think it's brilliant actually, because everything's, people know within the district council what everyone's doing, and it's absolutely brilliant. And just want to mention Focus on Young People in Bassetlaw, because they're working with children and young people, very vulnerable, giving packs out to them, and they did that very immediately of the lockdown, and they've been doing that throughout. So it's around food and it's around services, but it's also around play and fun activities for young people to help them through this crisis. So yeah, thanks to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scawthorne.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to pick up on something Councillor Duke said, and I think it needs highlighting, that Bassetlaw was up and running 2 weeks before the county council was, and we were supporting our communities in a way that that if we hadn't been Bassetlaw and we hadn't got a council that has really worked hard through the floods, through this and through other times when people of Bassetlaw have been in despair over what is happening, we have always been there to help them and make sure that they're all right. And I think it needs to be said, the importance of a district council when it has the locality to work with the people that you know that area. And people on the ground need to be able to speak up for their own districts. And that's why I say that it's really important that we fight for Bassetlaw District Council and make sure that people realise what we have here. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. I think what I've been, as a district, we have quite incredible third sector community. And for quite a long time, there's been work done to defend that voluntary sector community, as a result of which we have across the district, I would say, a huge degree of resilience. I think the way in which the wider community came together, stood up to the plate in the face of a pandemic, in the face of the most incredible demands to change and adapt their lives and ways of working, the ways in which local business recognised what they were required to do to support this effort and to close their businesses and adapt and change. And what's been most striking for me was the way in which the authority was able to plug into that and to take a leading and supporting role in that effort in the interests of the district, in the interests of local people and business. And I think the way in which we have been nimble-footed because there was a conveyor belt of different initiatives and different requirements that we were expected to turn around very quickly. And there are people in the foreground, and there are people that actually get the work done in the background, and those people are responsible for local businesses getting the funding that's coming through, and that the benefit claims are processed, and that we're plugging into the voluntary sector, adding that capacity, supporting them in their work to ensure that vulnerable people get the food and the prescriptions and everything else that they need during a real time of crisis. So I think what we have here is an incredible amount of work captured in a report. And I would say that actually, if we looked across the district and we looked across the work that other groups have done also, and local people have done, you could expand that report by about, you could say, 10 times as big with the accounts that people have and the work that people did. And I think it's fantastic that that work is now being recognised out there in the broader community. And I also know that a lot of people aren't interested in thanks. They just want to get on with doing the right thing by their local neighbours and local community. So it really is a phenomenal amount of work. But we do need to make sure that everything's in place as we move on from this point, because there may well be a need for more work to be done. We're not out of this yet by any means, and there's going to be lots of business and lots of people that will need support. And as I've alluded to previously, we need to be in the best position to do that when the time comes. And that's why we need to keep on with this work and review the practices that we have, support the voluntary sector, work with our partners, and keep on the front foot with this. Sorry, Councillor White, I think you might have indicated that might have been from previously. Okay, thank you. If it's all right, I'll be tempted at this point to move to see if people support the recommendations within this report. So first of all, I'll turn to Councillor Dukes, please.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
For.
Thank you. I'm also in favour. Councillor Lee.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Scawthorne.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor White.
For.
Thank you very much. And thank you for that report. The next item is agenda item 12. And this is an item that is to be discussed in private. The live stream, therefore, will come to an end shortly as we move to consider this confidential agenda item. And that is the usual course of events in discussing matters in private when it's of a confidential nature. I would certainly like to thank everyone that's been able to watch this live stream meeting, and I hope it has been informative and that people have been able to follow events. Earlier on in the meeting, I did note that there were officers that declared an interest